I've been having a chance to chat with her. Like a boss whisperer, Colleen Kettenhofen has the ear of hundreds of executives, managers, and supervisors. A leadership and change management expert, author, and award-winning speaker, Colleen has delivered more than 1,100 programs in 48 states and 5 countries for colleges, corporations, and associations. Colleen digs deep to discover what bosses want and conducts programs that show workers and students how to bounce back higher than ever. She's a frequent media guest and is the author of 2 books and 10 audio programs. Please welcome Colleen.
Who here is going to be entering the workforce part-time or full-time in the next several years? Raise your hands. Okay? Who here is already in the workforce? Part-time or full-time, and maybe you'd like a raise or more recognition? I see a lot of hands going up. Well, what if you could know what your boss is thinking? Their professional likes and dislikes, who they want to hire, promote, or fire, and why. And how does this information apply to you if you're a student working on group projects in class, or maybe you're about to graduate and enter the workforce, or you're already in it? Well, I've conducted in-depth conversations with more than 200 bosses and a handful of top executives and CEOs to find out job-critical secrets about employees that bosses don't share easily. And armed with this insight, this information will help students to develop their people skills and work more successfully with others. Before I give you a few of bosses' biggest pet peeves, which can be guaranteed to get you fired, here's a hint, if the behaviors go on, because ultimately it can affect morale and productivity. I'd like to hear from some of you. If you had to guess a couple of bosses' biggest frustrations with their employees that could get you fired, what would you say? Yes, right there.
I would say not showing up for work on time or not showing up prepared to work when you get there.
Okay, not showing up for work on time or not being prepared when you get there. I see a lot of people nodding. And that actually is number 1, excessive absenteeism, chronic tardiness, as well as the person who shows up on time, but to them the first hour is social hour, and they're the social butterflies. I see a lot of you nodding, but not nodding off to sleep, but nodding in agreement. Okay, yeah. Okay, your attitude. Yes. Disrespect.
Don't make excuses.
Excuses in general, okay?
Showing up hungover.
Showing up hungover. I think that would definitely do it. How about one last one, all the way in the back?
Not meeting deadlines.
Not meeting deadlines. Okay, some of you are absolutely right, and some of those were in the top 10, and I could give you a whole slew, but in the time we have, I'm going to just give you a couple of these, and if you'd like more, please come see me in booth 4. Beyond what Lauren had mentioned earlier about chronic excessive tardiness and absenteeism, number 1, negativity, subversiveness, lack of buy-in. This is the problem child whiner who doesn't have solutions and doesn't want them. I call this person the water cooler instigator because some of you maybe know this person. They like to kind of hang around, and it's almost like they want to get everybody riled up and get them to join what I call the Ain't It Awful Club, where everybody's standing around talking about how bad everything is. Why do you think this is such an issue for bosses? It continues and ultimately affects the morale of everybody. If it's allowed to go on, this person can become like a cancer that spreads. And I see a lot of you nodding. One thing I've found in my 16 years of conducting management skills seminars for managers, supervisors, and team leaders, as well as speaking at business conferences and conventions, is that ultimately, if the boss, or in some cases the student leader, doesn't deal with this person, after a while it starts to become a negative reflection on the leader or on the boss, because people start to wonder, why is he or she not doing anything about it? So you've got to nip it in the bud early on. What is a second biggest pet peeve of bosses that I kept hearing when I was conducting in-depth conversations? Drama. High drama. These are the people who are the disruptive gossips, tattletales, and people who have a desire for dissension. I mentioned gossips. Some of you are thinking, but Colleen, that's half the fun of going to school or going to work. The people that have the desire for dissension, these are the people who, they just like to stir the pot. You know, I call them the pot stirrers for that very reason. So the drama people leave the same bitter aftertaste as the negativists. One thing I found in surveying a lot of managers is that attitude ultimately mattered to them more than aptitude. Studies are showing we tend to hire based on skill, knowledge, or experience, and fire related to attitude. A lot of bosses said to me, Colleen, if I had to choose only one thing in hiring somebody or promoting somebody between high will and high skill, they said I'd go for the person who's high will, because I know they're malleable, teachable, and trainable. How about if I were to give you the top 2 things most bosses want to see from their employees? 2 things that most people don't know or do to keep their bosses happy. What would you all guess?
Team player.
Okay, team player, willingness, like willing to learn. Okay, besides obviously showing up on time and starting on time.
Drive.
Having drive. Okay, exactly. Optimism.
Extra mile.
Okay, always giving the extra mile. Okay, a couple of you, you were in the top 10, definitely, on what you had to say in terms of what the key traits are that they want to see. Number 1, and I think you had mentioned it, team player. I kept hearing that phrase over and over. They said, and I think this applies to student leaders too, who are supervising or managing people. They said, Colleen, it's important that the people working for me are team players. The word they kept using, respect. They said, I want people who are respectful toward their colleagues, coworkers, fellow students, managers, school administrators, everybody. And some of you might be thinking, but isn't this common sense? As some of you had said to me in the booth, common sense isn't always commonly applied, right? So for some people, they don't know this. So number 1, team player. Number 2, somebody had brought this up, proactive. Somebody who's looking down the road to what needs to be done, and they go ahead and they do it. The manager's not always having to prod the person to do the next thing. In my book, Secrets Your Boss Isn't Telling You, the first chapter is titled How to Get a Great Job and Keep It. What employers look for on interviews and what they never want to see. And I know we don't have a lot of time left, so I'm going to share with you just a couple of tips on what interviewers want to see. Number 1, and they were pretty honest in what they shared. A lot of them said, Colleen, when I'm interviewing someone, either to work for our company or somebody I'm thinking of promoting, I'm thinking, how is this person going to make my job easier? So being proactive, a problem solver, somebody here said optimism and drive. The other thing that a lot of people said was if they're late to the interview, their history. And what they said was, if they don't have the enthusiasm and the passion to show up early or on time for the interview, what are they going to be like once I hire them? A lot of them said they want somebody who comes to the interview and they've done their due diligence, they've researched the company, and they have visited the company website. They said, you'd be amazed how many people show up for the interview and they've never visited the company website. And I see a lot of you nodding, so maybe you've had some experience with this. One lesson I think I learned in having all these in-depth conversations with bosses and speaking and training for all of these years is it's not so much who you know or what you know, but how well you get along with others that ultimately determines your success in business and I think in life. And the holidays are coming up, which conjures up images of difficult people. And so that we're not everybody's difficult people, I'd like everybody to stand. And in closing, I would like everybody to take this pledge. Everybody raise your right hand and take this pledge, repeat after me. On my honor, I promise, when dealing with a difficult person, that I will first bite my tongue and count to 10. Because if I don't, I may say something that I will live to regret. Give yourselves a hand. Thank you all very much.
Another round of applause for Colleen Kettenhofen. Isn't that great? Guess what? We're all going to be looking for work one of these days. You and your students out on campus, great opportunity to help your students be more and better prepared when they go out to the job interviews and understand that's exactly what they're looking for.